All right, welcome, dog moms and dads, to our show where we discuss the everyday joys and challenges of pet parenting. I'm your host, Jen,
And I'm Ashley.
and this is a Dog Mom podcast presented by ZippyPaws.
I don't know if I
Okay,
feel like dancing today. This is going to be a
why?
tough one.
Well, I think the little dance break kind of helps ease us into today's topic, which is going to be a kind of a heavier one, but I think I'm going to try to make it fairly positive. Today we're going to talk about being Asian American, and being an Asian American business owner. And, I feel like there's been a lot happening in our world recently, and kind of wanted to address that, not in like a political way in any sense, but we have a little platform here, whether that's, our 10 YouTube viewers or our few dozen listeners. I still think we have a platform, and I've thought about whether or not to talk about this because it is kind of a sensitive subject, and I don't want it to be construed as a political. But I feel like I do want to talk about it a little bit, and so hopefully it goes well.
I think it's overdue. I think it's something that you and I personally talk about a lot. And part of the reason that we started this podcast was to share the conversations that we had. And I do. I think it's overdue. There have been a lot of things that have just been exemplified since the pandemic started. I don't think that they were created when coronavirus hit by any means, but it brought a lot to the surface. And I know you and I have also talked about, again, kind of touching on that political aspect. We don't want things to be political. I don't think we want that for this podcast. I don't think we want that for ZippyPaws as a brand. But I also think that when something is so inanely personal, you have to kind of at least use your soapbox for something remotely positive and informative too. And I think that that's where a lot of people and a lot of brands go wrong, is they embrace this idea of what I like to call performance activism. And at the end of the day, it means nothing, right? It's they're standing on an empty soapbox. They don't really have much information to share, but I think that you're able to share very personal stories, and that is a human way to help people learn. I think that's the
Right,
best way to put
right.
it.
Yeah, and I don't mean to say I have any solutions or anything like that, but I just want to kind of come here and talk about my experiences. And, we can't not talk about the fact that I am Asian American. And I think it's just a chance for me to start the conversation, and also hear about what other people have to say too. So
You
I'm
mean we're not
interested.
fixing the problem on this podcast? I feel like I was misled.
We have 1 hour to fix all of the issues, and let's start now.
I mean, I think you should probably start maybe with your personal experiences, what it was like growing up, and really sharing your story.
Yeah. Well, I think I'll just go back all the way to my parents. They came to the US in the 80s. They worked, before that, they worked in the Middle East, and they came to the US, and started their own company, kind of like how I did. And my dad was the importer for another dog toy manufacturer, as some of you may know. And I was born here in LA. But at 3 months, they took me back to China, and I was partially raised by my grandparents, and I stayed there until I was 6 or 7. So English is not my first language. I learned I learned Chinese first, and second grade, in the middle of like second grade, I was plucked out of my class, and my parents were like, "Oh, we'll go to the U.S. For a vacation," and I was so excited because I could go to Disneyland. It's like something I've always wanted to do, and then I just never went back home. So all my friends back home were like, "Where did she go?
Where'd she go?
Why is she never coming home?" It's kind of funny, but once that happened, obviously I had to learn English really quickly. I remember I was put in a second grade classroom, and my teacher assigned a girl who knew a little bit of Chinese to be like my seat partner, so she could kind of like translate a couple of things for me. But I was like oblivious. Like on my first day of school, I went to class and I was just like swinging my legs because I could not understand anything. And I had to like really catch up. And I had to ask my teacher for like worksheets with like kindergarten level material, like cat, like how to spell dog. So everybody else was working on like sentences and stuff, and I was like working on like hat, cat. And so I don't know, I don't even know if people made fun of me because I couldn't understand it anyway. So that was a fun experience. And then I learned English pretty quickly in about 6 months or a year. Because when you're a kid, you like, you know,
That's what I was
you're
going to say.
yeah, you're thrust in that environment, and you pick it up really quickly. So I did that, and I was really good at math because you don't need English to learn to do math. So I was like top of my class in math. I was like the weird kid that didn't really speak but got like the best grades in
A
math.
silent genius.
Oh yeah. So that's kind of like my experience. I and growing up, I grew up in the suburbs of LA, so we had a lot of Asians, and the high school that I went to was maybe like 65% Asian. So I never felt out of place because I know a lot of people who grew up in the States, they were like the only Asian person in their class, or they faced a lot of racism growing up, and that wasn't the case for me. So I think I got a lot of confidence in myself. Like I didn't think of myself as like an outsider or anything like that. So I was lucky in that regard. And then growing up, after that, I didn't necessarily face a lot of outright racism towards me. The only event that really stood out to me was maybe when I was like 20 something, like 24 or something, and I went to Chicago with my friend, and on the street this woman yelled out to me. She said, "Go back to your own country, like we don't want you here." That was like the only outright racism that I felt that was directed at me from a complete random stranger. And my friend did not back me up. So I kind of laughed it off, but like I remember when I was like walking away, like I had tears in my eyes, and like I didn't want him to see. I don't know. It's just that was like I was kind of like in shock, maybe. I didn't really understand why somebody would do that, and I didn't really want to address it with him. So we just kind of like left it. And I feel like that's kind of like with our upbringing too, right? You always hear about Asian people saying like there's a phrase in Chinese, it's called 吃苦, meaning you eat bitterness, meaning like if you're hardworking and you eat your bitterness, that's a good thing, right? Like you shouldn't be showing all of your bitterness or like the hard work. Like you should just eat it. So that's kind of like how we were taught while we were growing up. So I think everything that's happening in the world right now is a good way for us to practice speaking up, right? So that was kind of a traumatic experience for me, like thinking about it. But another like thing that I want to talk about is kind of like these like little microaggressions. And I remember yesterday when I showed you this outline, you were like, "Wow, people do that? Like you
Yeah, the
didn't
concept
know."
is just, it's just so foreign to me. And I don't know if it's because I was raised in a multicultural family. My mom is half Filipino, so I'm Filipino and Russian, and those are two very, very, very fundamentally different upbringings. Well, there's some crossover, but
Yeah.
it, I think it just comes down to the fact that I was raised to be respectful, and it would never, I don't know, it would never cross my mind to walk up and to speak to someone in what I assumed was their mother tongue, especially knowing what I do about Asian cultures. They're all very different. You know,
Hmm.
they have fundamental likeness, and I think that you can attribute that to cultures from all over the world, but they hold their culture very dear. And I think that language, like names, like when you mispronounce someone's name, you know, misreading someone's language is very, very offensive, at least to me. So I don't, maybe I don't know. I have nothing. I'm still just in shock.
So the thing in question that Ashley's talking about is I wrote down like little examples of like microaggressions that I've experienced. And one of them is random people coming up to me and saying konnichiwa or other hellos in other Asian languages, which it surprised me that you didn't know because I mean, I guess why should I be surprised? Because it would only happen to Asian people. It's like they will come up to me and they'll go through their Rolodex of hellos in the Asian languages that they know. Usually, like they say ni hao, which is the Chinese hello, and I would just play it off, or I would lie to them and be like, "Oh, I'm Korean. I don't understand." And then usually they don't know the word for hello in Korean, so they get stumped. And sometimes they'll say konnichiwa, which is Japanese, or they try like different other like languages, and I'm like, I don't know what you want me to say. Do you want me to start speaking to you in Chinese? Because then you wouldn't, respond back with anything.
Yeah.
Like, all you know is ni hao, right? And then I would say, what if I just like responded in like full Chinese? What would you do?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Like,
and aren't there different, there are different versions of Chinese to speak too, depending on where you grew up within China. There are different, I don't think you can compare them
yeah,
to like dialects, but it's still, again, it's the fundamental core of someone's culture. I just think it's a dangerous thing to assume.
I just think I don't know. I don't know if it's necessarily like I've never taken it where I feel like it's insulting because I just don't feel that way. Maybe I should, I don't know, but I personally don't. I just think that they're trying to relate to me just based on how I look. They're trying to like I don't know, either be funny or maybe flirt or something. Like they want a reaction from me. And maybe they know it's a little bit insulting, so they want me to respond with anger
It's a
or
yeah, it's a
annoyance.
conversation
It's
attempt,
just
but
like something for them to like start talking to me. And usually I just like have like, my poker face, like I don't show any emotion. And then they're like annoyed that I'm not showing any emotion. And then there are other things which I think a lot of Asian people know that like we get the question, where are you from? Where are you really from? Where are your parents from? Where did you come from? Like any version of that question is super, super common. I don't know. It's just like why do you ask anybody else that? Like that's maybe with other cultures they do ask that, but I don't know of any other cultures where you go and like you start saying English. Like you don't see a white person, you start saying like German, hello in German, or like hello in French and hello in Spanish, and like go down the list. So that's I think kind of unique to Asians, but it's
yeah.
very, very common.
Yeah, I think the closest I've gotten to that is some lady on the train told me that she just looked at me point blank and said, "You don't look like you're American. Where are you from?" She goes, "Are you European?" One, like,
So what?
It's so hard to tell too. I don't know like what you're looking for, but even that was
Right.
offensive to me, although I have no problem not looking American, but it's such a bizarre conversation starter. I think it
Mm-hmm.
just that's something that can be so easily taught from a young age, and could that whole concept can just be ended really quickly, I think, in a generation by simply explaining what's wrong with it, and how even though your intentions may be good, like let's think positively and
Mm-hmm.
assume that they're not trying to be a certain way. And I say this with an eye roll for those of you listening and not watching, but it doesn't matter what your intentions are. How it lands is the only thing that's important, and it's offensive. And I think that it's really easy to just not do it.
Yeah, I think it's just so easy to not do it, and there's so many other things to talk about. If you are approaching, a girl that you think you want to talk to, or any, person in general, like you can talk about anything else other than how like their race. You can compliment them on how they look, maybe, I don't know, but the fact that you're just trying to like make a little connection based on like what ethnicity they are, like, I mean, at best it's like cringe inducing. Okay, like nobody, it's not like, oh my gosh, let me go on a date with you because you guessed my correct
Yeah.
Asianness.
Yeah.
That's just like not gonna happen.
And I think if you know enough about the culture where you would be able to hold a viable conversation about, I'm just going to quote you, Asianness, you would know not to ask and not to assume, right?
Yeah.
Like, just don't.
Like if it comes up in conversation, of course we'll talk about it. I'll tell you I'm Chinese, I know how to speak Mandarin, things like that. Like it's a conversation, but like you're just using my Asianness to strike up a conversation, and it's not gonna go anywhere. Like what do you expect me to say? It's kind of like the bad pickup lines, and it just doesn't work. So so I mean, we're talking about this now because there's been a huge uptick in reported crimes against Asian Americans. And I say reported because it happens all the time. It's just that we don't get a lot of publicity on it. And with the recent events, especially with the Atlanta shootings, like people who probably haven't been
As
involved
aware. Yeah.
now is aware, and now they're hearing a lot of stories about hate against Asian Americans, and with COVID, and how some people and some news outlets call it like the China virus. It's just a lot of negativity around how we approach it, right? Like there's no need, and we're gonna get into kind of like how we see that in the pet industry as well in a little bit. But I think it's just like it's hurtful rhetoric, and it's unnecessary, because it kind of helps to perpetuate something bad about a culture or a country, and we just don't need that. It's unnecessary, and it's hurtful, and we can see that it's hurtful because a lot of Asian Americans are being beat up on the street. A lot of it are elderly. I don't know why you think it's okay to beat up like grandmas and
That's
grandpas.
that is next level to me, and without trying to get too passionate about it, if I ever see someone attack, push, shove, hit, I mean anything, anyone elderly, you're gonna have to bail me out of jail. I just there's no place for it, and I don't understand what point you're trying to get across going after, the weakest of communities, right? Like it's
Yeah.
bad enough that you feel the need to be ugly to another human being, but going after the elderly is ridiculous. There's no other way to put it, and I think the video that surfaced yesterday of
Mhm.
an Asian woman being attacked outside of a hotel. And
Oh,
then
I was just gonna talk about that.
the security guard does nothing. And I think that's the conversation that we can have that's helpful, where, step in. I understand people don't want to necessarily walk into conflict, but if you're shutting a door on somebody and just walking away and allowing that to happen, you are actively part of the problem. And for anybody that doesn't want to hear that, I apologize, but that's the unfortunate truth. I mean, it was rough. That was
Yeah.
hard to watch.
It was so hard to watch, especially with the force that the man attacked the lady. I think she was like 65 years old. That's only a few years older than my mom. So it's like heartbreaking to think that it could be your own mother, walking down the street doing like, errands, and she's violently attacked and kicked by someone for no apparent reason. And then the security of the hotel, I mean, your job is security. Like, okay, I might understand if you're just someone walking, you have your own life. I mean, I don't know if I can understand, but like, I can understand a little bit better. Like, you have your own life and you have to get to your own stuff. I don't know. But your literal job is security. I mean, you're just standing there, and they just closed the door on her
Yeah,
while she was on
he's
the
a
ground.
coward. I'm sorry. He's a coward. That's all I see when I watch that. Like,
And like, I can understand if you're a woman or you're a smaller person, you don't want to put yourself in harm's way, but call somebody who can come. Be like, hey, I just witnessed something. Like, maybe give your statement to the police or something, because, I've had situations where I was in a car accident or something, and I wish there were people to corroborate with my story. And my parents got into a car accident a few years ago where the guy ran the red light and hit them, and he actually didn't have insurance, and he didn't really get in trouble for causing the accident because they had no proof that he ran the red light. But there were so many other people in the intersection. Like, if you see something, like, give your statement so that there's proof, right? And luckily the guy went to jail because he had an outstanding warrant. But I mean, for this accident, he didn't really get into any trouble. So I think if you witness something like that, if you don't want to personally intervene, get somebody who can call the police, or
or
take a
simply
video.
shout, right? I feel like once you shout, other people feel like it's okay to get involved, because we have this weird herd mentality where, oh, no one's getting involved, I don't want to be the person to do it. So
Yeah.
if you're small, or if you're elderly and you're concerned, shout, just, hey, stop. And kind of what you were getting ready to touch on too, pull out your phone. People don't want to be on camera committing a crime. That is the quickest way to stop something, I would
Mm-hmm.
say, without getting involved. That could have been done through the window. Obviously, you never know if somebody's carrying a weapon or carrying a gun, and you have to protect yourself as well in order
Mm-hmm.
to help other people. I don't think either of us are suggesting everyone go out and be heroes and just get in the middle of it, but there are so many different things that you can do to
Right.
stop it.
And yeah, I'm not saying you should be a vigilante or something and like chase the guy down and like all that stuff. Like, but just doing something, because a lot of times people are kind of in shock. Like, I feel like this too when I'm in a situation where I don't know what to do. I tend to not react first. You know how people have like this fight or flight tendency when they go into like these type of situations. My thing is neither. I'm just like standing there. I don't really know what to do. I kind of just freeze. So sometimes it takes that person to be like, "Hey, that's wrong," for me to be like, "Oh yeah, let's act." Right? So
And
it
that's normal.
sometimes,
I feel like that's the
yeah.
majority of people.
Yes, yes. And I want to also touch upon a website for some resources. It's called ihollaback.org. And they It's IHOLLA back.org, and they talk about the 5 Ds of bystander intervention. And I wanted to touch upon this. I don't want to get into this, spend too much time on it, but they talk about in situations where you see something like this, what should you do? And they're pretty easy to remember. They're the 5 Ds: distract, delegate, document, delay, and direct. So distracting is kind of like maybe we can diffuse a situation by distracting from the violence, or delegating, which is like you take on a leadership role in that situation. You'd be like, hey, call the police. Hey, make sure, if someone's bleeding, hey, get them a tourniquet, and you please go find something. And that sometimes when people are in shock, they need that like urge, right? They need someone to tell them this is what they can do. And if you break it down into like little segments, it's easier for people to understand like what they should be doing. And then documenting, of course, is just to take a photo, take a video with your phone, or like check their license plate number, or make a mental image of what the perpetrator looked like, things like that. And then delay and direct. So I don't really want to get into those, but this is like a really good resource for all of us to kind of like learn and think about what we should do in those kind of situations. So when it actually happens, we have a better we know, we kind of like practice it already. It's like an earthquake drill. Like you practice it a few times, and then when it actually happens, you're like, okay, here's what I need to do.
So I'm going to kind of shift gears a little bit, and I think it's worth speaking about, being an Asian American owned company in the pet industry, and just kind of delving a little bit more into that. Like how does it affect our company, if it does? And, what do you think you had to overcome anything? What do you think are, I don't want to say necessarily hurdles, but
yeah, I don't feel like there were any hurdles necessarily that I've had to overcome. I honestly don't wake up and think, oh, I'm an Asian American, right? Like I just think I'm American, right? And I'm just the same as everybody else. I've had experiences that are my own, but I don't feel like I'm at a disadvantage or I'm necessarily at an advantage just because of how I look. So in the pet industry, I think there are some things that we can do better. For example, like there's a lot of negativity around products or food made in China. And yes, there have been instances in the past where dogs have gotten sick because of ingredients that they've added, like rawhide. And I think maybe 15 years ago, there was something with food. So there's been something circulating in the pet industry recently about racism on the packaging of dog food. They would say things like no ingredients sourced from China, or like no Chinese ingredients, or stuff like that. And I think I understand where they're coming from, because admittedly, it was ingredients coming from China that were making the dog sick. But I think now we have such strict testing and regulations that it's harmful to keep saying that. If you're a dog food company and you want to talk about your sourcing of product, you can say you source ingredients from the USA, or you source from Canada, or you're made in Canada.
Messaging plays a huge role because it's so, you don't even realize it, right? Like it's just as easy to say all products sourced in Canada and the United States versus nothing's coming from China. And I think simply doing that is getting the messaging that you want across. To your point, you can understand where the ingredients are sourced from would be important, but it's also not putting a negative connotation on an entire culture of people.
Right, right. And something that happened maybe 15 years ago is not something that's happening today. It might be, but I mean, it's just better to like not even touch upon that because it's just bringing negativity and it's like reinforcing the idea that people might have, which is like everything that comes from China is bad or it's low quality or something, you know? And it's just, we don't need this kind of rhetoric. And I've seen a lot of pet influencers being involved in this and emailing these manufacturers, and most of them have been really gracious and have said that they will work on removing this type of language from their packaging, which is awesome, you know. And like, we're not here to like condemn you, really. We're allowing you the opportunity to change and to do better. And if you do that and you kind of like listen to us, that means you're a great company, and we don't really fault you for writing that in the first place because I see where they came from, you know. I see why they would do that in the beginning.
Yeah, I think it's as simple as having a conversation and explaining the why behind your logic, because some people just don't understand the psychological ramifications of the rhetoric that they're putting out. And I think that if anything, this hopefully ends up being enlightening for companies, for brands, for people, for everyone, and just how to get your messaging across in a way that's inclusive for everybody, even if your target market is very, very exclusive. You can still put out branding that isn't offensive and isn't harmful to people.
Yeah, agreed. And in terms of ZippyPaws, I don't think it actually affects any any of our day-to-day lives or our messaging or anything like that. I mean, I think a lot of people don't even know that the founder of ZippyPaws is Asian American, because I don't necessarily put that. It's not like
It's not in bold letters on our website.
yeah, I don't advertise it. I don't necessarily, because a lot of people now are shining a light on Asian owned businesses or black owned businesses, which I think is great. You know, if you want to purchase from those kind of companies, then that's awesome. But I don't necessarily, for me personally, like I don't necessarily need to be included because I I just put out product, and if you like the product and you like our brand, that's what I want to be known for. The fact that I'm Asian doesn't really like is not like a positive or negative to me in any way. It's just a matter of fact, right? And
I think it's a positive though, especially now because you have a platform. People can see what you've created and you're able to put out even the messaging in this podcast. You're able to reach an audience and share a story in a positive way, which I think embodies everything that ZippyPaws is. I mean, we've gone through a lot as a collective in the last year and a half, and I don't think that the ZippyPaws has ever broached anything tricky in a way that is, negative or that is too heavy, but it's able to shine a light on something that is very real and is continuing to happen in a way that's very much ZippyPaws. And by that, I mean, it's very much you.
yeah, and I hope it comes across that way. And I feel like we've kind of dealt with this a little before, but all of our products are made in China. Our manufacturers are are in China, and we have very strict regulations, and we do a lot of testing for our customers too, because our customers require testing, and we've always passed with no issues. We've been doing this. My dad has been doing this for, I don't know, 25, 30 years maybe. Yeah, he's been doing it longer than I've been alive, so it's been like 30 something years. So we know what we're doing, and we always are looking to improve our quality. We don't our safety is a huge concern of ours. So I mean, I don't think that made in China is a negative in any way. We're an American company, and we source our products from China. it's just what it is, right? And I hope that people can disassociate the low quality with made in China in our lifetime, because I don't think it's true. It really depends on the brand, right? So, and I want to also say that for ZippyPaws, our focus is the dogs, right? Like our focus is making dogs happy. So it's not about like who I am. It's not about how I look like. It's about the dogs, and it's about our customers. So I want to make that clear too.
And spoiler alert, dogs don't care.
Dogs don't care what you look like. Although I must say, Birdie doesn't really like men as much, so she does care.
I mean, Bjorn loves me when I wake up in the morning and I look like a hot mess. So I'm going to go ahead and say that dogs probably don't care. And I think that that's the fine line that we have as a company, that you and I have when we're working on any marketing materials, or when we're trying to figure out when we speak out against something. I know we kind of touched on this already. It's become very popular for brands to speak out. And I think that's great. I think that if you're upset about a brand speaking out about something that's only pushing positivity, that's more of a you problem and not so much the brand problem. But I also understand, these just kind of blanket statements that are all the same for every issue. And then you kind of look internally into the brand and you see that they're not practicing what they preach. I think that's a problem. But I think with you and I, it's been kind of that fine line of, how do we broach this in a way that is organic and authentic to us? Because it is something important. It is, something that's going on that's very relevant to our business, because even though politically, you're trying not necessarily to get involved, you're still an Asian American. And I don't think that you can be unbothered by something like this. And I think it's doing a disservice to you and to your heritage and to your dad's culture to not speak up. And that's kind of where I draw the line, where at the end of the day, if you don't like it, tough, go buy another brand of dog toys. Like, I think that it reaches a point where you have to take a stand and stand up for what's right in a way that's positive and in a way that's informative and that's just going to help generate positivity. But for, the very few people that have an issue with it, that's not my problem. I'll fight for that till the end. But we've been very lucky in the response to the messaging that we put out, and I monitor our social media channels, and we did not receive any negative feedback. So I think a lot of it too is we have a very dangerous, I don't want to say situation, but the media is very polarizing, and how they present situations, people act like it's this huge, widespread us versus them mentality, and it can't be that. And I'm happy to say that the ZippyPaws audience, we didn't see any of that. We didn't see mass unfollowing. We didn't get canceled. But again, because it was a message that was important to us because it was so relevant.
Yeah. And yeah, I do want to touch upon that, because if you are a small business owner, we get you, because it's hard to navigate, right? You don't necessarily want to kind of most businesses don't really want to necessarily take a stand in something that's so polarizing, whether that's political or social activism. And I totally get that, right? Because you don't want to like necessarily alienate anybody for their beliefs, because you're just a business. Like for us, we just want to sell dog toys. We want to make your dogs happy. Like we're not here to be like we're this or X or Y. We're our beliefs doesn't matter, right? Yeah. Like it doesn't really matter in our core business, and I want to keep it that way, because ZippyPaws is not political. If we have a stand, our message is we love all dogs, all are welcome. Everybody is welcome to purchase our product. We treat everybody the same, and so it's really hard to kind of like take a stand because you don't want to alienate anybody, but I don't think it should be polarizing to take a stand um against hate, right? Against
That's what I was going to say.
treating other people just based on how they look like that should not be political at all. Like nobody should be like, well, that company's standing up for Asians and I don't like that, or something. Like, how is that okay,
Yeah.
you know? So I don't think anything that we would say is political at all. So
Yeah. But I think we've all seen brands that hop on a train of, you know, we're anti this, and then they get held accountable for their business practices in the past of, well, are you hiring fairly? Are you practicing what you preach? And that's an example of,
yes.
if you see brands doing that, call them out. I
Mm-hmm.
think that is just there's a difference between just being an ugly person and holding a brand or a person or an influencer or a celebrity accountable.
Yes, I do agree with that because if your brand is putting out messaging that is different from their business practice, then I think you can call them out because if they're not practicing what they preach, then they shouldn't be preaching it in the first place. I don't know. It's just
The
it's
slippery slope.
yeah, yeah. So that's all I'm gonna say about that.
So as we kind of, wrap this up, what advice would you give for what people can do, right? Because I think there are layers, and I know that you're a big proponent of not everybody being an activist. So what are ways that people can help if they don't necessarily feel comfortable standing on a picket line?
Yeah, I think I've thought about this a lot and it's really tricky, right? And I understand that it's tricky and I have a lot of mixed feelings about everything. Like I don't necessarily even have all my thoughts and maybe my thoughts will change. Like it's crazy right now and I want to say that I don't know about anything. So I just want to give kind of like my personal view of it. And I'm not really an activist at all. I'm not super active on social media, even. I like to look at other people's things and I don't really post too much myself. And I feel like a lot of people are very active and vocal on social media, starting a lot of conversations. And I think that's amazing. And this podcast is kind of like my own tiny little contribution to the conversation. I don't necessarily feel super comfortable posting a lot of things myself, and I think a lot of other people are much better at it and they have a lot more resources than I do. So I don't necessarily feel like I need to post a lot of resources because there's so many great resources out there. So that's why I kind of personally don't really get involved, and it's very draining to me. So I don't do it just to preserve myself. I don't know if that's necessarily selfish, but it's just how I feel. And
I'm going to interject. Sorry. I think in this conversation though, it is draining for you, and I don't think that the burden should necessarily be yours to bear in terms of educating. I think the people that are outspoken activists are amazing, but
I
at the
agree.
same time, it should be a collective effort, and it shouldn't fall completely on your shoulders to educate people to make a change. I mean, the list goes on. It's
Yeah.
not it's not solely up to you.
Right. And I think that I'm contributing how much I feel comfortable with, and that's all I can ask for anybody else, whether you're, of Asian American descent, feel free to share what you are comfortable with sharing. And a lot of people have stepped up and shared. And I'm on Clubhouse a lot, so I listen to a lot of people. And it's been nice to hear people talk about their personal experience. And also a lot of non-Asian people are also in these rooms. And it's nice to know that other people care about our issues. So yeah, I'm like happy with how the conversation is going. Not happy about why we're having this conversation, but just try to make the best of it, right? And I think like if you're not Asian, what we can do is the easiest people to do is as an individual is to listen, right, and let people know that they're heard. I think that's the most powerful thing that we can do as individual people is to start in our own little bubbles and little social circles. I don't think we need to like become an activist or go to Congress and start these laws. And like, I mean, if you want to, that's amazing. But I don't think the vast majority of people are like that. And I think a lot of people just want to be heard, right? Just me telling you guys like my experiences, and taking that and listening to other people, I think is very powerful. And like practice empathy, right? Just because someone is having an experience and they're brave enough to open up to you and tell you about it, like then that means people trust you, and that's a great thing, right? So I always think that listening is very, very important.
I think kind of taking it a step further too, starting those conversations, reaching out to your Asian or Asian American friends and saying, hey, how are you doing? I think you touched on it earlier. It's not necessarily something in the Asian culture where they're just going to openly come out and speak about this. And I know that I have friends that I'm trying to subtly reach out to, and it doesn't have to be hey, there's a lot of garbage going on. Do you want to talk about it? It's just simply, hey, how are you doing? And then leading the conversation and, is there anything that I can do to help? Is there anything that you need? Is there anything that I can do better? That's the question that nobody wants to ask, because it's inevitably going to, you run the chance of having somebody actually give you feedback. But you have to, if you're going to ask that question, you have to be prepared to take feedback. We are all human. None of us are perfect. And communication is a dance. It's a back and forth dance. And you have to, every time you dance with a different partner, it's going to be a different situation. You have to learn how they move. You have to learn their rhythm. And I think that as human beings, when we communicate with one another, we need to be able to read the room, to understand that our friends are being quiet, and maybe they're quiet because they're overwhelmed. And I think that facilitating a conversation where you can be an outlet for someone is just as important as posting on social media, and it's just as important as walking in these huge protests. I don't think there's not a scale to being helpful in a situation like this, because every little bit builds. Listening to someone and in turn also inspiring other people to do the same. I think I've had an interesting perspective for this one, because half of my mom's family is Filipino. I love them dearly. I'm very proud of my culture on that side, but I also get people on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, sending me very hateful things. And these people don't even understand. They don't know that that's part of my culture. So people are comfortable coming to me being hateful, and people are comfortable coming to me to talk about their experiences. And I see both sides, so I know it's real. And it's just, it's hard to grasp, right? But I think when people are coming to you with ugly rhetoric, that's when you have an opportunity to be really brave. And that's when you say, hey, listen, that's not acceptable. it's not cool to speak that way, or you can go so far as to say, hey, this is really disrespectful. I don't think you understand, right? And those are conversations that nobody wants to have with their friends. I have plenty of friends who say really, really inappropriate things, and I'm guilty of letting it slide because I know they're joking. But I think that that's something that I can improve on, right? Like it might be funny because you think you're coming from a funny place, but it's still offensive. And I don't even like to have those conversations with people. I don't want to be the one that's like, you can't do that. But by being that kind of a person, you kind of become complicit in what they're doing, and it leads up to a boiling point. And then we have, Asian elders getting knocked over in the street. So saying something as quick as, or as simple as shutting an ugly conversation down is more monumental than people think it is.
I 100% agree with that. And I've had periods in my life where people have said stuff like that. And I wish that my friends who are sometimes it's a lot of Asian guys also being very racist against Asian girls. I don't know why that happens, but it does happen. And I wish that my my guy friends who are Asian would have stood up for me, and not just laughed along with it, So I 100% agree that like even stopping a joke or a conversation, like you don't know how much that would have helped somebody who's in that situation, right? And it is hurtful. And I kind of have a example for this. It's kind of like the when years ago when we would say like, oh, that's gay or that's retarded, and it's not coming from a bad place. Like you're not making fun of a disabled person or a homosexual person. Like that's not, you're not putting them down, but it's the rhetoric, right? Like you don't want to associate gay with any type of adjective, right?
You're attaching a negative connotation to a word that describes
Right.
a group of people. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's kind of like the point I'm trying to make is like if somebody is making these kind of jokes, or like if your friend is going up to Asian girl and saying, konnichiwa or something, and she doesn't look amused, you can be like, hey, bro, I don't think she likes that, Simple as that. And, you can just help them to understand that, like, it's not really cool to say these kind of things. I mean, I know you're not coming from a hateful point of view, but let's just like talk about something else, you know? So simple as that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a mic drop.
I think we solved the situation. Boom.
Just be nice. Yeah. If it was that easy.
Yeah, it's so sad how like people have been so vocal about hate against everything, whether that's like based on race or politics or anything,
Or sex or religion. I mean,
yeah.
the world is big. The world is big, and you have to give people space to be themselves. But I think within that, there's a line. If the person is being themselves and they're an ugly person, try to teach them to be otherwise. Try to help guide them in a direction that allows them to be who they are in a way that's not infringing on the rights of other people.
Yes, exactly. Like it's not about like cancel culture really. It's about like holding people responsible for their actions, right? Like you can't be mean to somebody and then nobody speaks up, right? Like we can't be talking about free speech. Like yes, you can say mean things, but there are consequences, right?
Exactly.
So it's like a balance, and we're not saying like nobody can say anything. It's just try to be nice to people. Try to be nice to people. Come on.
Right?
Yes.
Like if you want to say something really nasty, hold it in, go home, have a margarita, sit on it, and think about if that's what you really want to say or if you needed a margarita.
Okay, so I think we've solved all of the issues. And the answer is margaritas.
The answer is always margaritas. I wish it was that easy, but
Yeah.
For everyone that is still listening, and that made it through this podcast, thank you. I think it veered a little bit from what we normally talk about, but I'm proud of us for talking about it. I'm proud of you for talking. I'm always proud of you though, but I'm proud of you for talking about it. And
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. I think I was like a little nervous because I don't know how people will react, and uh, I don't know why I was nervous. I shouldn't be. It's just talking about my personal experience, but I just hate how political everything has gotten, and I don't want to come off as that way. And I want to thank everybody for listening to me. And if you want to talk to me about your own experience, you can just DM me on Instagram and we can start a conversation.
and if you say anything nasty, I will be the one responding. I'm like your live-in pit bull.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm like attack.
But if you do want to boop that follow button, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, which I highly recommend you don't follow, at Dog Mom Podcast. And
We're supposed to be
ZippyPaws.
promoting our things. We're not supposed to be telling other people don't watch
I'm just going to omit YouTube. So you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Dog Mom Podcast, and our website at www.zippypaws.com/Dog Mom Podcast. And if you want to, we're also on YouTube.
Yeah, and then we'll be back to our regular schedule or regular content next time. So hopefully we don't have to talk about anything heavy for a little bit because
Let's hope.
it's draining. Yeah. But thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye, guys.